Chapter 8 of A Horse's Tale, 1960s, Around the World's Fair, Julie's Story, by Mary Alice Sanguinetti. "Look, Karen, there it is! There's the Space Needle!" Julie cried. As her family rode the bus downtown, the Space Needle, towering above the skyline, looked sharp and new. "Today," thought Julie, "I'll ride the elevator to the top and look out at the world." All through the quiet summer in Longview, Julie had been dreaming about this trip to Century 21, the World's Fair. There would be exhibits from countries all around the world, places she longed to visit. "Look, Blanca," she whispered, holding her little wooden horse up to the window. "Isn't it exciting?" She had found Blanca, bleached white by salt water, on the beach one summer in Olympia. The little horse looked old, and she was sure it had traveled far. Now, on her imaginary journeys, the little horse was always at her side. Across the aisle of the bus, her father caught her eye. "Dreaming again?" he teased. "Peter, don't," said her mother. "Imagination should be encouraged." She looked seriously at her daughter. "Now, Julie, dear, I'm counting on you to watch Karen. It's easy for a little girl to get lost at the fair." Julie frowned. Why did she have to watch Karen? Her little sister was always interrupting her daydreams with questions. They got off the bus at Westlake Mall near the monorail platform. The streets were bustling and the cars roared past. Julie held Karen's hand tightly. She had never seen so many people. In her other hand, she clutched Blanca. A sleek white monorail train came gliding into the station. They stepped onto a speed ramp and moved effortlessly up to the train. Julie's father gave each girl a $50 for her round-trip fare. Then he slipped a couple of dollars into Julie's pocket. "For treats," he whispered. "Thanks, Daddy," Julie whispered back. They all stepped onto the train and found seats. Julie and Karen pressed their faces against the window and gazed out at downtown Seattle. As the train zoomed silently toward the World's Fair, Karen leaned against her. "Can I hold Blanca?" she asked. Karen was twisting one of her braids like she always did when she was excited. "Okay," said Julie, "but don't drop her." They were quickly approaching the Space Needle. 95 seconds, announced Julie's father as the train slid into the station. The wonderful ride was over, and they were among a throng of people descending from the train. Looking to see that her sister still had Blanca, Julie caught hold of Karen's hand. "Where should we go first?" asked Julie's mother. "The food circus," said Karen. Julie pictured a tent full of performing hot dogs and giggled. "No," she said, "the International Mall." "How about the World of Science?" suggested Julie's father. Julie's mother consulted the schedule of events. "There is a fashion show at the Interior's Fashion and Commerce Pavilion." "No, let's go to Science," Julie quickly sided with her father. She didn't want to look at clothes. "We'll have time for the food circus and the International Mall, too," said her mother. "Julie, no wandering off now, and make sure you hold on to Karen's hand." The World of Science started with a film explaining how scientists work. "They record what they see and share what they've learned with their other scientists," her father told them. Julie wished he would stop talking. She was on Darwin's ship, the HMS Beagle, sailing toward Galapagos. She saw giant turtles and flightless birds and unfamiliar stars. "Julie?" Karen's voice broke through her daydream. "What's that man doing?" Reluctantly, she followed her parents and sister toward the next exhibit. In the small laboratory sat a scientist surrounded by bottles of flies. "Studying fruit flies," said Julie. "Yuck!" "This way," said her father. They entered an auditorium and sat down. Overhead was a domed white ceiling. "This is Spacerium Central Control," announced a loud voice. "Prepare for takeoff." The auditorium faded into darkness. "Julie, are we really going into space?" asked Karen. "Shh." Around her, stars were blossoming. She saw the Earth below, a misty blue and white ball as they moved deeper into space. She was in a silver spaceship, speeding through the vast darkness toward a tiny red speck. She was on the first American expedition to Mars. When the lights came on again, she blinked and sighed. "The Boeing Company helped sponsor this exhibit," Julie's father said as they left the auditorium. "And the projector they used has the world's largest wide-angle lens." Julie sighed again. She didn't want to know how everything worked. It spoiled the magic. "I'm hungry," said Karen as they passed the food circus. "We'll eat later," said her mother. "Let's go to the boulevards of the world." As they walked toward the boulevards, Julie saw the sky right ahead. The boulevards were lined with rows of shops. They surrounded a green rectangle of lawn and the International Fountain. Through the crowd, Julie caught a glimpse of the fountain. Colored water sprayed from a dome in the middle of a huge concrete saucer. Her mother led them toward a shop on Boulevard West filled with Swiss clocks. Julie looked around at all of the clocks. She liked the sound they made, all ticking at once with different voices. What would it be like to be a clockmaker? She imagined living in a small village in Switzerland. In the evening, she would ride Blanca out of the village to watch the sun set over the Alps. Looking down to share this with Blanca, she realized that Karen was no longer beside her. "Karen," Julie whispered, hoping her mother wouldn't notice. "Karen?" She darted out into the crowd looking for her sister. Past Mexican hats, past furniture from Hong Kong, past perfume from France. She saw the skyride cars passing overhead. The shops and throngs of people blurred around her. Where was Karen? What would her mother say? She had to find her. Up ahead, she saw a hot dog stand. Maybe Karen was looking for something to eat. Her heart was pounding. Julie squeezed through the crowd. Delicious smells drifted toward her. Pizza and fresh-baked pie. She didn't feel hungry. Where, oh, where was Karen? She pushed her way past a German restaurant and a man eating Belgian waffles. Finally, she spied her sister's red sailor dress through the crowd. "Karen!" she shouted. "Over here! Karen!" Her sister turned around. There was a frightened look on her face. "Karen, I'm so glad I found you," said Julie breathlessly. Karen looked even more frightened. "Julie," she said. "Julie, I lost Blanca. I've been looking for her everywhere." Julie's heart sank. How would they ever find a little horse among all these people? "It's okay," she lied. "We'll find Blanca later. Right now we have to find Mommy." "Don't you know where Mommy is?" Tears welled up in her little sister's eyes. "Of course I do, silly," said Julie. "She's looking at Swiss clocks." Taking Karen's hand, Julie led the way around the fountain. When they got back to the shop, it was filled with dolls instead of clocks. "I can't let Karen know we're lost," thought Julie, "even if it is her fault." "Look," she said, "those dolls are from China." She pointed to a man and woman doll dressed in silk. "And that one's from Switzerland. Isn't she pretty?" "But where are the clocks?" asked Karen, her lip quivering. "We'll see them soon." Silently, Julie scanned the surrounding shops, trying to remember what had been near the clock shop. She saw Yugoslavian imports and folding canvas boats. Nothing looked familiar. Why hadn't she paid better attention? She led Karen through the crowds around the fountain, trying to think what to do. Up ahead, she saw the hot dog stand again. They were going in circles. Fighting off panic, she turned to her sister. "Karen," she said, "are you still hungry?" Karen nodded. Julie bought a hot dog for her sister, but she didn't want anything herself. She missed Blanca too much. Why had she ever trusted Karen? As they walked away from the hot dog stand, Julie saw the skyride again. She felt her heart lighten just a little. If she kept the skyride on her left, they would come to Boulevard West. A few minutes later, she heard the sound of ticking clocks. Their mother looked around as they came up beside her. "Where's your father?" she asked. "I thought you were with him." Suddenly, Julie started to giggle. "He wandered off," she said. "Maybe he got lost." Giddy with relief and miserable about Blanca, she began laughing even harder. Karen joined in. Their mother looked annoyed. "Really, girls," she said, "it isn't funny. How will we find him in all this crowd?" At that moment, their father reappeared. "Quite a fountain," he said. "The water and music are controlled by a tape." He smiled down at Karen and Julie. "How about lunch in the Space Needle?" There was a long line of people waiting to go up in the Space Needle. Julie wanted to cry. She'd been waiting all summer for this, but now, without Blanca, she almost didn't care. "Mom," she said, "Karen lost Blanca." "Oh, dear," said her mother. Karen's face tightened. "I didn't mean to," she whimpered. "We'll check the lost and found after lunch," her father said. They crowded into the elevator. As they soared upward, Karen and Julie looked down at the grounds of the World's Fair and the city beyond. Somewhere down there was Blanca. Julie frowned at her sister, but Karen didn't notice. She was gazing out through the glass, dreaming of faraway places. Like me, thought Julie. Her misery began to soften. She felt glad that Karen wasn't lost. Seated in the Space Needle restaurant, Julie looked out across Seattle at the distant Cascade Mountains. As the restaurant turned in its slow circle, the food circus, the science center, and the international fountain came into view. Beside her, Karen pushed aside her second lunch with an unhappy face. "Julie," she said, "what if Blanca isn't in the Lost and Found?" This time Julie didn't mind her sister's question. "It's okay," she said softly, meaning it this time. "Think of the places Blanca might go. Switzerland or Mexico or even China." Looking down at the World's Fair, she began to imagine where her little horse might travel next. "If it isn't a box, some kid drops you. I ended up behind one of the booths. When the World's Fair was over, one of the workmen found me. I was put into a box again with 2 old coats and an umbrella. Boring. There I stayed until I was given to a family of Laotian refugees."